The room was cold, the kind of cold that made your skin tingle, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones. Captain Alina stood at the front of the long, sleek table, staring at the holographic image flickering above it. The galaxy's most powerful beings surrounded her, their faces cold and unreadable. The aliens, the so-called Council of the Cosmos, had decided to give humanity one last chance. The room was silent. The weight of the moment hung in the air like a thick fog. It was humanity's final opportunity to prove that they deserved a place in the galaxy. One last shot. If they failed, the Council would have no choice but to wipe out the human race, erasing all evidence of their existence. "We have watched your species for centuries," the alien representative, a tall, spindly creature with dark, shimmering skin, began in its calm, mechanical voice. "Your wars, your greed, your short-sightedness. You have brought your planet to the edge of destruction." Alina clenched her fists, trying to keep her calm. She knew they were right. Humans had done unspeakable things in their pursuit of power, leaving their planet nearly uninhabitable. But to have it all laid out in front of her like this, by beings who weren't even human, made her stomach turn. But the alien continued, raising one long, clawed finger. "You are not entirely beyond hope. Your species has something that most of the others do not. Resilience. A will to survive, even when faced with extinction. That is why you are here." The tension in the room increased. Alina's mind raced. She was trying to focus, to listen, but all she could think about was the weight of the choice in front of her. Could humanity really change? Was it too late? "We are offering you an opportunity," the alien said, his voice growing colder. "A series of tests, the most difficult challenges ever put to any species. Survive them, and you will earn your place in the galaxy. Fail, and you will be erased from history." Alina's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her. She looked around at the rest of her crew, sitting nervously at the table, each one knowing what was at stake. She was the leader. It was her decision. The fate of humanity was in her hands. "How do we know you won't just destroy us once we've completed your tests?" One of her crew members, Lieutenant Harper, asked. His voice was shaky but defiant. "How do we know this isn't just a way to eliminate us once and for all?" The alien representative's eyes glowed with a cold, almost amused light. "You don't. That is the gamble you are taking." Alina's mind swirled with questions. She wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but she knew there was no time. If humanity was going to survive, if they were going to get a chance to rebuild, they had to take it. There was no turning back now. She straightened up, meeting the alien's gaze. "We accept your offer. We will take your tests. We will prove that humanity deserves to survive." The alien's lips twitched upward into something that might have been a smile, but it was impossible to tell. "Very well, Captain Alina. We will see if your species is as resilient as you believe." The image flickered, and suddenly the room was filled with bright, flashing lights. A large holographic screen appeared in the center of the room, displaying a map of the galaxy. At the center of it all, a red planet pulsed ominously, surrounded by multiple icons marking different locations. "This is where the tests will take place," the alien said. "The first challenge will begin shortly. You will receive your instructions. Prepare yourselves." The lights dimmed, and the map disappeared. The hum of the room returned to its eerie silence. Alina could feel the weight of the decision settling into her chest. Humanity had just been given one last chance to prove their worth. She looked around at her crew again, their faces filled with determination, but also fear. This was it. There was no turning back. If they failed, it was over. But if they succeeded, well, Alina couldn't allow herself to imagine that just yet. They had to make it through the tests. They had to fight with everything they had. "We'll survive," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "We'll prove we're worth the galaxy's mercy." Her words seemed to hang in the air as they left the room, ready to face whatever the aliens had in store for them. Outside, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, but it felt more suffocating than ever. The countdown had begun. Humanity's final chance was here, and they would fight with everything they had. The vastness of space stretched before them, dark and unforgiving. Captain Alina stood on the command bridge of the human ship, Hope's Dawn, her eyes fixed on the distant stars. The galaxy seemed endless, and yet humanity's future had never been more uncertain. They had accepted the Council's offer, no turning back now. The test had begun. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," Lieutenant Harper called out, his voice tense. The ship's engines hummed steadily beneath their feet as they sped toward the first challenge. "I'm detecting several strange energy signatures, but we're not sure what they mean." Alina's grip tightened on the rail. The first challenge was upon them. She could feel the pressure building in the pit of her stomach. What had the Council planned for them? What would they have to face? On the view screen, a large asteroid field loomed ahead, its jagged rocks floating in the black void. But there was something more, a massive structure at the center, a derelict space station half hidden among the asteroids. It looked ancient, like something out of a nightmare. Broken pieces of it drifted aimlessly through space, floating like the remains of a long-forgotten civilization. "We've arrived," Alina said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "Prepare for landing. We need to know what we're up against." Her crew moved quickly, each member following their orders with precision. Everyone understood what was at stake. No one could afford to make a mistake. The ship descended through the asteroid field, the Hope's Dawn weaving between floating debris as the station grew larger on the view screen. The eerie silence outside was broken only by the soft hum of the engines. The tension in the air was thick. No one knew what awaited them, but one thing was clear. This test would be like nothing they had ever experienced before. The ship's landing gear touched the station's cracked, metallic surface with a faint thud. The moment they landed, the crew was in motion, donning their helmets and securing their weapons. There was no telling what dangers lay ahead. Captain Alina was the first to step off the ship, her boots clanging against the rusted metal of the station. The air was thick with dust, and the faint sound of groaning metal echoed through the silence. The station's interior was a dark labyrinth of corridors, all marked by flashing warning signs. It felt abandoned, like a tomb in space. But Alina knew better than to assume anything. "Stay sharp," Alina ordered. "We don't know what we're walking into." The Council could be watching us right now. Her team nodded, their faces set with determination. They moved in formation, their boots heavy on the metal floor. The only sound was the soft hiss of their breathing through their helmets and the occasional clang of their footsteps. It was strange to think that they were the only ones in this vast, dark place. As they moved deeper into the station, the walls seemed to close in on them. A faint light flickered above, casting long shadows that danced unnaturally. The crew's footsteps echoed louder, making the quiet feel even more oppressive. Then, without warning, the lights went out. The station was plunged into darkness. "Damn it," Harper cursed. "I can't see a thing." "Stay calm," Alina said, her voice unwavering. "Stay in formation. We've trained for this." The crew froze, their senses heightened as they waited for something, anything, to happen. The silence stretched on, suffocating. They had no idea what was lurking in the shadows, but Alina's instincts told her they weren't alone. A loud mechanical screech echoed through the station, followed by the sound of something skittering across the floor. It was a sound that sent chills down their spines. Something was moving in the darkness. "Get ready," Alina whispered, signaling for her crew to prepare their weapons. Her hand hovered over the pistol at her side, her heart racing. Whatever was out there, they had to be ready for it. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, and the crew was greeted by the sight of several large, insect-like creatures emerging from the shadows. Their eyes glowed a sickly green, and their sharp mandibles clicked ominously. The creatures were fast, too fast, and they were closing in quickly. "Move," Alina shouted, drawing her weapon as she fired at the nearest creature. The shot missed by a hair, but it was enough to send the creature skittering back into the darkness. The crew opened fire, but the creatures were relentless, dodging and charging in a blur of motion. Alina didn't wait. She grabbed the nearest weapon, a large plasma rifle, and took aim. The creatures were like nothing she had ever seen, alien, dangerous, and completely relentless. She could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her. This was their test. This was what they had signed up for. "Keep moving," Alina yelled. "We can't stay here. Get to the control room." The crew pushed forward, firing as they went, but the creatures seemed to multiply. For every one they killed, 2 more appeared. The station had been designed to test their limits, to push them to the brink. And the council was watching, waiting to see if they could survive. With every step, Alina could feel the weight of humanity's future pressing harder. She knew this wasn't just a test of strength. It was a test of their will to survive. Would they make it, or would they be swallowed by the darkness of the station and the creatures within it? As the crew reached the control room door, Alina felt her pulse quicken. They were close, so close, but something told her that this was only the beginning of the real challenge. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a dark, high-tech room filled with blinking lights and screens. But there was no time to waste. The crew entered, securing the area. The control room was their last chance to get the information they needed to pass the first test. "Let's get to work," Alina said, her voice steady despite the chaos they had just faced. "We need to finish this." But as she moved toward the main terminal, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. The control room was silent, save for the low hum of machinery and the faint beeping of console alerts. Captain Alina and her crew moved swiftly, their boots echoing in the cold, metallic space. Their breath came in short bursts, each step a reminder of how much they had already endured. The creatures had been relentless, but they had pushed through. Now, they were at the heart of the challenge, the core of the test the Council had set for them. "Captain, this console should allow us to access the main system," Lieutenant Harper said, his fingers flying over the controls. He didn't look up, but his voice was filled with tension. "We need to decrypt the data to move forward." Alina nodded, her eyes scanning the room, constantly alert. There was something unsettling about this place. The quiet, the darkness. They had already faced one threat, but she knew that wasn't all. The Council had promised the tests would be brutal, and she suspected this was just the beginning. "Any signs of more creatures?" she asked, keeping her tone calm. "Nothing yet," Harper replied. "But there's still a lot we don't know about this station. It's not just a test, it's a puzzle. We need to piece it together before whatever's lurking finds us again." Alina moved to stand near the large viewport at the far end of the control room. Outside, the stars flickered like distant candles, but the view was obscured by floating debris and fragments of the destroyed station. It felt like they were trapped in a graveyard of forgotten machines and derelict ships. The weight of their mission was heavy on her shoulders. "Captain, I'm unlocking the core data now," Harper announced, his voice tight with focus. "But there's a security system in place. We'll need a code, something we don't have yet." "Great," Alina muttered, turning away from the window. "So now we need to find a code in a station filled with deadly surprises." She was trying to keep her frustration at bay, but it was hard. Every minute spent in this station felt like an eternity, each second more dangerous than the last. The unknown loomed over them, threatening to crush their spirits. The silence was shattered when the sound of skittering echoed down the hall. Alina's hand instinctively went to her weapon, but she didn't draw it yet. There was no telling what was coming next. "Stay quiet, stay focused," Alina ordered. "We don't know what we're dealing with." They had barely finished getting into position when the door to the control room slid open with a metallic screech. More of the creatures, alien horrors with glowing eyes and sharp claws, poured in like a swarm of insects, their mandibles snapping. "Not again," Harper hissed. Alina barely had time to react before the creature's charge. She shouted orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Fire in a staggered formation. Don't let them surround us." The crew opened fire, their weapons lighting up the room with blue and red flashes as they fought to fend off the attackers. But the creatures were relentless. For every shot that hit its mark, two more swarmed in from the shadows. The room filled with the sound of rapid gunfire, the acrid smell of burnt metal in the air. "Captain, we can't hold them off forever." Lieutenant Parks, another member of the crew, shouted, her voice tinged with panic. "Then we don't stop," Alina said, grit in her voice. "We push through. This is our test. We don't quit." She fired again, her shot sending one of the creatures into the wall, but it didn't stop the swarm. In fact, it seemed like they were multiplying faster than they could shoot. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. Their backs were to the walls, and every corner seemed to hide more danger. "We need to find that code," Alina shouted over the chaos. "Harper, what's the status on that data?" Harper was hunched over the console, typing furiously, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm getting close. Just hold them off for a little longer." But the creatures were growing bolder. They pressed in from every direction, their glowing eyes fixed on the crew. Alina's heart raced. She could feel the pressure mounting. They couldn't keep this up for much longer. Just when it seemed like they were on the verge of being overwhelmed, Harper shouted, "Got it. I've unlocked the code." "Then get it to the terminal," Alina ordered. Harper didn't hesitate. He rushed over to the central terminal, typing quickly as the creatures continued to pour into the room. The sound of gunfire was deafening, and the crew was exhausted. Sweat dripped down Alina's face, and she could feel her muscles screaming for relief. But there was no time for rest. This was the fight for humanity's future. As Harper entered the final line of code, the room shook. The walls trembled with a deep, low hum. Alina stumbled slightly but kept her footing. The station was responding to the unlocking of the system. Then, suddenly, everything went silent. The creatures stopped. The hum of the station faded, and the lights flickered once before returning to a steady glow. Alina blinked in confusion. The creatures that had been charging at them only moments ago were now motionless, their glowing eyes dimming as their bodies froze in place. The threat had suddenly dissipated, leaving the crew standing in stunned silence. What just happened?" Parks whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Harper stared at the terminal, his face pale. "The system's activated. It's shutting down the defense grid. The station is safe." But Alina knew better than to trust anything too easily. This was part of the test. A new challenge had been unlocked. They'd survived the creatures, but the test wasn't over. The hardest part was still ahead of them. "We're not done yet," Alina said, her voice sharp. "Stay alert. We've passed one challenge, but there's more waiting for us. Let's get to the next phase." The crew nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They were battered, but they hadn't been broken. Humanity still had a chance. They would face whatever came next. Together, they moved forward. And the test continued. With the station's defense grid shut down, a brief, eerie silence settled over the control room. The crew, breathing heavily from their earlier battle, stood frozen in place. The creatures, frozen in their tracks, were now nothing more than statues. But the strange calm felt unsettling. "We've got a moment," Alina said, her voice steady. "Let's regroup and prepare for the next challenge. We don't know what's coming next, but I can promise it won't be easy." Harper, still hunched over the terminal, was already scanning the data they had unlocked. His eyes flicked back and forth as he processed the information, his fingers moving rapidly over the keys. "The code we entered triggered something deeper," he said, pausing. "This station isn't just a relic. It's a complex, self-replicating system. We've only just unlocked part of it. There's something more hidden inside. Alina's stomach sank. What do you mean, more? Harper pointed to a map that appeared on the screen. The map of the station, once static and simple, now revealed a deeper level of the station, a maze of corridors and locked doors, leading to areas that were previously hidden. This station wasn't built for just anyone to explore, Harper said. There's a labyrinth hidden beneath the surface, an underground complex that no one's seen in centuries. It's like a secret within a secret. Alina stepped closer to the screen, her mind racing. This was it, the next part of the test. They'd survived the first challenge, but this would test their endurance, their wits, and their ability to work together as a team. How do we get to this labyrinth? Alina asked. Harper pointed at a flashing icon on the map. We need to access a control center on the lower levels. It's the only way in, but there's no telling what's waiting for us down there. We don't have a choice, Alina replied, her voice firm. If this is the next step, we'll take it. Let's move out. The crew moved as one, filing out of the control room and back into the station's dark, abandoned corridors. The flickering lights seemed even more ominous now, casting long, jagged shadows that danced along the walls. It felt like they were walking into the unknown, with no idea what lay ahead. The deeper they went, the darker it became. The air grew colder, thicker, and more oppressive. The walls were lined with strange symbols that they didn't recognize, their meaning lost to time. The further they descended, the more it felt as though the station was alive, watching them, testing them. Captain, Lieutenant Parks said, her voice tinged with anxiety. The atmosphere is getting heavier. Do you feel that? Alina nodded, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her weapon. I feel it. Stay sharp. They descended a narrow, spiraling staircase, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the cold, metallic walls. As they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a massive underground chamber. The space stretched out before them like an abyss, with dark tunnels leading in every direction. At the far end of the chamber, a single door stood tall, its surface marked with glowing runes. It pulsed with a strange energy that made the hair on the back of Alina's neck stand on end. This is it, she said, pointing to the door. This leads to the control center. We're close. Hold up, Harper cautioned, raising a hand. There's something strange about this place. I'm not sure we're alone down here. Alina's gaze swept across the chamber. The air felt thick, heavy with an unseen presence. She could hear the faintest sounds, like whispers in the wind, though there was no wind to speak of. It was unnerving, but there was no turning back now. She motioned for the team to move forward, and they approached the door cautiously. Alina placed her hand on the cold surface, feeling a strange pulse beneath her fingertips. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dark passage beyond. It led into an even deeper part of the station, the unknown. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of something ancient, something forgotten. As they stepped through the door, the lights flickered once more, casting shadows that seemed to move with them. Suddenly, the sound of heavy, mechanical grinding echoed through the passage, and the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang. Captain, Harper shouted, but there was no time to react. From the darkness ahead, a low growl filled the air. Alina's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if it was a creature, a machine, or something else entirely. But one thing was certain, it wasn't friendly. Stay alert, Alina barked, weapons up. As the crew tightened their formation, the growl grew louder, more menacing. They were being stalked. Whatever it was hunting them. Then, out of the shadows, something moved. A flash of red eyes in the dark. Alina's hand shot out, signaling her team to spread out. The growling continued, but now it was accompanied by the sound of claws scraping across the metal floor. Something big, something deadly, was moving toward them. Alina's pulse quickened. She could feel the weight of the test bearing down on her. This was their moment. The point where everything could go wrong. This was no longer about survival. This was about proving that humanity was capable of rewriting destiny, and she wasn't about to let anything stand in their way. "Get ready," she shouted. The hunt was on. The growl was closer now, reverberating through the walls of the dark, metal corridor. The tension was palpable. Every creak, every shift of the air, felt like a threat. Alina's fingers gripped the handle of her weapon tighter as she scanned the shadows. But nothing was clear. "Stay sharp, everyone," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sounds of their breathing and the eerie, low growl that echoed through the tunnel. "We don't know what's out there, but we can't afford to be caught off guard." Harper, standing next to Alina, nodded, his face tense. He had his weapon ready, but his eyes were darting between the corridors, trying to make sense of the noises that seemed to come from every direction. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Whatever it is, it's playing with us. It knows we're here." Parks, who was crouched behind a corner, suddenly motioned to the group. "It's moving again. Closer." The growl rumbled once more, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging along the ground. Alina turned quickly, her eyes searching the hallway, but there was nothing in sight. The passage seemed to stretch on forever, a maze with no end. "Get ready," Alina ordered, her voice calm but firm. "Whatever's coming, we'll deal with it together. Keep your distance, and watch each other's backs." The team spread out, taking up positions along the corridor. They moved in a coordinated formation, eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Alina's heart raced. She could feel the pressure mounting. This wasn't just a test of survival, it was a test of their strength, their courage. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Without warning, a massive hulking shape emerged from the darkness ahead. It was like a shadow given form, its body a grotesque mix of sinewy muscle and jagged, exoskeletal armor. Its eyes were glowing red, its fangs gleaming as it let out another guttural growl. The thing was huge, easily 3 times the size of the largest creature they'd fought so far. The air around it crackled with an oppressive energy, and its mere presence seemed to make the space feel even more suffocating. "Stay calm," Alina said through gritted teeth. "Don't break formation. We can take it down." But deep inside, she wasn't sure. This wasn't just another alien creature. This was something far more dangerous, something that felt almost unnatural. The beast's eyes locked on them. And in that moment, Alina saw something in those glowing red orbs: intelligence. This wasn't an animal. It was a predator, a hunter, and it was studying them, waiting for them to make the first move. "Fire," Alina shouted. A barrage of energy bolts shot from the crew's weapons, lighting up the dark hallway. But the beast was fast, too fast. It darted forward, using its powerful legs to propel itself like a blur of motion, dodging their attacks with frightening agility. Harper fired again, hitting the beast square in the chest. It howled in pain but didn't stop. Instead, it roared, a sound that shook the very walls, and lunged forward at incredible speed. "Parks, move," Alina shouted, but it was too late. The creature's massive claws slashed through the air, catching Parks off guard. She managed to raise her weapon in time, but the impact sent her sprawling across the floor. The creature let out a deafening growl as it turned its attention to her. "Get away from her," Alina shouted. Before the creature could strike again, Alina's quick thinking took over. She fired directly at its head, the energy bolt hitting its skull with a sickening crack. But it wasn't enough. The beast growled again, angry but not defeated. It was resilient, far stronger than anything they had encountered. Harper, panic creeping into his voice, fired again, this time aiming for the beast's legs. A shot landed, but it barely slowed the creature down. It was like attacking a mountain. Nothing seemed to penetrate its armor. "Captain," Harper yelled, "we can't stop it with conventional weapons. We need to figure out its weakness. Fast." Alina's mind raced. She had seen something strange in the way the creature reacted to their attacks. There was a pattern. It wasn't invincible, but it was adapting to their strategy. "Everyone, listen up," she barked. "The beast is reacting to the energy blasts, but it's not just about strength, it's about timing. We need to hit it where it's weakest." The team nodded, understanding what needed to be done. They could not rely on brute force alone. This would require teamwork, precision, and quick thinking. "Harper, you're with me," Alina said, her voice steady. "We'll create a diversion. Parks, cover us. Get a clean shot when it's distracted." Parks, still recovering from her earlier fall, nodded with determination, her eyes flashing. "Ready when you are." Alina and Harper moved in sync, drawing the creature's attention away from Parks. Alina fired once more, aiming for the creature's eyes, hoping to weaken its sight. The beast recoiled, howling in pain, and in that instant, Harper launched himself at its legs, trying to cripple it. The creature roared, thrashing wildly, but its movements were slowing. It was losing its footing. "Now!" Alina shouted. Parks took the shot, aiming for the creature's exposed underbelly. The shot rang out, and this time, it hit its mark. The beast howled in pain as it staggered back, its limbs giving way. It collapsed with a deafening crash, its massive body hitting the ground with a violent thud. For a moment, there was only silence. "Is it dead?" Parks asked, breathing heavily as she cautiously approached the fallen creature. Alina's eyes narrowed. "I don't trust it. Stay on guard." But the creature didn't stir. It was down, but Alina knew this wasn't over. This was just one obstacle, one step in the test, and whatever lay ahead would be just as deadly. "Good work, everyone," Alina said, trying to catch her breath. "But don't get too comfortable. We're not out of this yet." With the creature finally defeated, the team gathered themselves and continued forward. They knew that the station held more challenges, more creatures, more traps, and more tests to pass. But as they moved deeper into the labyrinth, there was no turning back. They had survived this fight, but they weren't done yet. The quiet after the battle with the beast was deafening. The crew stood still, sweat slicking their brows, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Alina took a deep breath, eyes scanning the now motionless creature at their feet. It was large, monstrous, but it wasn't their only challenge. And she knew that in a place like this, there would always be something more dangerous lurking just beyond the shadows. "Let's move," Alina commanded, her voice calm despite the weight of the situation. "The mission isn't over yet." Harper, still catching his breath, nodded, stepping cautiously over the fallen beast. "We've got to be close now. The station's design is too complex to be just a storage facility. There's something more to it, something hidden." Alina's eyes flicked over to the dimly lit hallway ahead. "We've seen clues already. Let's hope this next step gives us some answers." The crew moved forward, leaving the remains of the beast behind as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. The metal walls pressed in on them, and the path grew more treacherous, twisting and turning like a maze. The lights above flickered ominously, casting long shadows that seemed to shift with every movement. "We've passed the same room twice," Lieutenant Parks muttered, her voice tight with frustration. "This place is like a puzzle. It's not just built to hide secrets, it's designed to keep you lost." "We're not lost," Alina replied, her voice firm. "We're just figuring it out. Keep your wits about you." As they pushed forward, the air grew colder, and the walls began to show strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. They were alien, cryptic, and yet there was something familiar about them, as if they were meant to trigger something in their minds. Alina's heart raced. She had a hunch these symbols weren't just decorative. They had a purpose. "This station is old," Harper said quietly. "But these markings, they don't belong to the species that built it. Whoever left these symbols behind was different. They knew something we don't." The deeper they traveled, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The weight of the unknown pressed in on them, and the further they descended, the more Alina could feel that they were walking into something far bigger than they had anticipated. At last, after what felt like hours of navigating the labyrinth, they came to a large chamber. It was vast, its ceiling lost in darkness, and in the center was an enormous, ancient-looking device. The air around it hummed with an eerie energy. "What is that?" Parks asked, her voice reverberating through the room. Harper approached cautiously, his eyes scanning the device, his mind working quickly. This is no ordinary machinery. It's a core, a power source, but unlike anything I've ever seen. Alina stepped forward, her gaze locked on the strange structure. It looked like a giant altar, covered in more of the cryptic symbols, with energy crackling around it as though it were alive. Her instincts told her this wasn't just a source of power, it was the heart of the station. Whatever this device controlled, it was central to everything that had happened here. "If we can access it," Alina muttered, more to herself than anyone else, "we can find out what this station was really built for." "But how do we get in?" Parks asked. "It looks like it's sealed." Alina stepped closer to the glowing structure, studying its surface. The symbols were arranged in a pattern, and something about them felt like they were meant to be activated in sequence. She reached out, brushing her fingers against the glowing symbols. They pulsed under her touch, a faint hum resonating through the air. "Captain," Harper called out, stepping forward with caution. "What if it's not safe to activate this thing? It could be linked to whatever system is still controlling this place." Alina hesitated, but her resolve was firm. "We don't have a choice. We're already too deep into this to back out now." With a quick motion, she activated the first symbol, and the device responded instantly. A deep rumble shook the ground beneath them, and the room around them seemed to come to life. The energy crackled louder, and a series of lights blinked to life, illuminating the vast chamber in an eerie glow. Suddenly, a deep mechanical voice boomed from the walls, its words heavy and distorted, as though they had been stored for centuries. "Welcome, visitors. You are the chosen ones. But know this, you are not the first to come here. Many have tried and failed." Alina's heart skipped a beat. The voice was unnatural, cold, but there was a hint of something more. An intelligence, a consciousness behind it. "Chosen ones," Harper whispered, his voice tense. "What is this place, and who's speaking?" Before Alina could respond, the voice continued. "This station was built not for exploration, but for war. It was never meant to be discovered. You have awakened something that cannot be undone. Proceed at your own peril." The message echoed through the chamber, sending chills down their spines. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but Alina stood firm. They had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The ground beneath them trembled once more, and suddenly, the entire structure seemed to shift. The walls began to move, and sections of the ceiling retracted, revealing an even darker, more terrifying core beneath. From the shadows, strange mechanical beings began to emerge, more complex and dangerous than anything they had faced so far. The station, it seemed, was not just a relic. It was a weapon, a test, a challenge that had been waiting for the right moment to come alive. The crew was no longer just a group of explorers. They were the test subjects of something much older, much more dangerous. And Alina knew that no matter what happened next, they would have to face whatever came at them, or they would all be lost. "Stay together," Alina ordered, her voice steady, despite the rising panic in her chest. "We move forward. We'll finish what we started." With weapons drawn, the crew stepped deeper into the shifting labyrinth, knowing that the true test was just beginning. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy, rested on their shoulders, and they would fight until the very end. The labyrinth had changed again. The walls groaned, and the very air seemed to twist as though the station itself were alive, watching, waiting, testing. With each step deeper into its heart, Alina could feel the oppressive weight of its ancient secrets pressing harder upon them. The crew moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing against the cold metal floors. The strange mechanical beings that had emerged from the shadows had retreated back into the depths, but their presence still loomed like a dark specter, watching them, judging them. Alina's mind raced as she pieced together the scattered fragments of what they had discovered so far. This station, it was not just a weapon. It was an artifact, a relic from a time long past, and the power within it was not of this world. The deeper they went, the more the device at the center of the station called to them. It was a beacon, a warning and an invitation. The voice that had spoken to them earlier still echoed in her mind, its words a constant reminder of the danger they faced. You are not the first to come here. Many have tried and failed. Alina's fingers clenched around the grip of her weapon, a symbol of her determination. She would not fail. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. Keep your eyes open, she said, her voice low but firm. We're getting close. Stay sharp. The crew nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They had come this far, and they couldn't turn back. The answers they sought were just beyond the next door, and the fate of their mission, and perhaps humanity itself, rested on what they would find. Ahead, the path opened up into a vast, cavernous chamber. The walls were lined with strange, crystalline structures that pulsed with an eerie light. At the center of the room stood a massive structure, what appeared to be the core of the entire station. It was impossibly large, a twisting, organic mass of metal and energy, coiling around itself like a living thing. The air around it hummed with power, and the faint sound of machinery whirred in the background. Alina stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The device was beautiful in its grotesque way, a fusion of technology and something darker. She could feel the weight of it, the potential that it held, the ability to reshape the galaxy itself if it fell into the wrong hands. Is this it? Parks whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. Is this the source of all the power? It has to be, Alina replied, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. This is what they were protecting. This is what they were hiding. The crew stood in silence for a moment, taking in the vastness of the core before them. Then, Alina's mind snapped back into focus. She had one goal now, to unlock the secrets of this place, to find out what it truly was, and to ensure that no one else could use it for destruction. We need to find a way to activate it, Alina said, her eyes narrowing as she surveyed the core. There's got to be a control panel or interface nearby. Harper stepped forward, his gaze scanning the area. It looks like there are multiple terminals on the perimeter. They might be linked to the core. Without hesitation, the crew split into pairs, each heading to a different terminal to investigate. Alina moved to the nearest one, her fingers trembling as she accessed the interface. The screen flickered to life, displaying more of the cryptic symbols they had seen throughout the station. But now, they were glowing with a strange energy, almost as if they were alive. Alina, Harper called out from across the room, his voice filled with concern. You need to see this. Alina's stomach tightened as she rushed over to him. Harper was standing before a larger terminal, his face pale as he read the information displayed. This is a weapon, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's not just power. It's a bioweapon designed to annihilate entire fleets, to destroy civilizations. This station, it was never meant for peace. It was built to end worlds. Alina's heart sank. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the truth was darker than anything they had imagined. The galaxy had never faced a weapon like this, and now, the choice was hers, to destroy it or risk the future of every living being in the galaxy. We can't let this fall into the wrong hands, Alina said, her voice cold with determination. If we don't stop it now, there's no telling what kind of destruction it could cause. But how? Harper asked, his voice filled with doubt. This thing is beyond anything we've ever seen. How do we even begin to shut it down? Before Alina could respond, the room shuddered, and the hum of the core grew louder, vibrating through their bones. The walls seemed to close in, and the strange mechanical beings that had been lurking in the shadows reappeared. They were moving faster now, more organized. It was clear they had been waiting for this moment. "They're here," Parks said, her voice tight with fear. "We've activated something. And now we're not alone." Alina's mind raced. She couldn't let the crew get overwhelmed. Not now. Not after all they had been through. The core was the key, and she would stop it, no matter what it took. "Get to the core," Alina ordered, her voice filled with urgency. "We need to shut it down. Now." With weapons raised, the crew moved toward the core, ready to fight whatever came next. The battle was far from over, and the true test was about to begin. They would have to fight not just for their survival, but for the future of the galaxy. As they closed in on the core, Alina knew one thing for certain. They would either succeed and rewrite the fate of the universe, or they would fall. And this weapon would unleash chaos unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. The heart of the machine was waiting.